7th grade lesson 2.1 is covering multiplication of integers. I have a feeling you'll like this better than adding and subtracting integers, though you'll get very, very comfortable with adding and subtracting integers. This lesson, both multiply integers for lesson 2.1 and divide integers for lesson 2.2, kind of fall into some simple a rule that you just put into place and kind of memorize. Hardest part of it is making sure that you don't apply the multiplication and division simple rule for integers to addition subtraction. It doesn't work for addition subtraction. It only works for multiply divide. So let me show you why it works, and then I'll show you the rule that goes with it. So just remember that multiplication is a repeated addition, right? So if I have 3 times negative 2, I can say that that's negative 2 added to itself 3 times. And if I were to put that on a number line, it would look something like this. I would go negative 2, and then I would go another negative 2, and then another negative 2, and that would end up at negative 6. Also recall that multiplication is commutative, meaning you can do it in either order if that's the only operations that are going on is just a multiplication. So you would find that you'd get the same answer if those were reversed. We had 3 times negative 2, now we have 2 times negative 3. Again, that's just two groupings added together of that. So we have a negative 3 plus a negative 3. And on a number line, you would go from 0 to negative 3. And then another negative 3, and you would still end up at negative 6. Something you might notice is that if I have 2 times 3, I get 6. That multiplication is still the same. It's just this sign is an issue that we need to keep an eye out for. But if one of those was negative, you're going negative multiple times. All right, and so then you get that kind of that double negative starting to show up in this again, because here I have a negative 3 times a negative 4. So let's use that opposite of scenario again. The opposite of, meaning this guy. So the opposite of 3 times negative 4, 3 times negative 4. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do 3 negative 4s. Negative 4, negative 4, and negative 4 added together 3 times, and I get this. But this little negative here is going to make me do the opposite of that. Well, the opposite of that is going to look like this. It's going to look like that. Opposite of 3 negative 4s is 3 positive 4s. So your answer to negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. Now again, recognize 3 times 4 is 12. So that multiplication is still nothing changed for you. It's just the issue of the signs. So now that takes us to the simple rule that you'll just use. If you were to practice with the little yellow and red coins or number lines, you would come to this conclusion that, wow, every time I multiply together ones that have the same sign, I always get a positive answer. And every time I multiply together the ones that have different signs as each other, I always get a negative answer. So what you start to get in the habit of recognizing, and you'll memorize this over the next few years, and the biggest thing, like I said, that you will wrestle with is your brain is going to want to say, I want to use this rule on my addition because a negative times a negative is a positive. And you're going to say, oh, a negative and a negative in addition is positive. That's different. So it's really important to kind of separate in your brain. This rule works for multiplication, does not work for addition subtraction. So anytime you multiply a negative times a negative or a positive times a positive, your product will be positive. If they have the same sign, you will get a product that is positive. If you have different signs, a negative times a positive or a positive times a negative, your product is going to be negative. So your steps are simple. You multiply the absolute values, you ignore the signs and do the multiplication. Then you check the signs. If they're different, put a negative on your product. If they're the same, put a positive on your product. Done. Let's see an example. Okay, so I have 13 times negative 3. Notice there is no sign in front of 13. And by now you recognize that if there's no sign in front of it, it's because it's positive and we know that's implied. All right, so I'm going to do step 1. I'm going to look at my absolute values, ignore the signs temporarily, so it's 13 and 3, and I'm going to multiply those. And I get 39 as a product. I have different signs, and anytime my signs are different, my product is negative. That's it. That's all you do. So use those rules from your notes. They're at the bottom of your second page of your notes that has that rule right in front of you, and practice it, and it'll get stuck in your head by the end of this lesson, probably.